Okay. Alrighty. Well, I'll start off here. So, welcome everyone to our utility Twitter space today, where we're trying to spread seeds of knowledge to inspire other citizens to research distributed ledger technologies and crypto networks that have real-world utility and that interoperate with traditional finance. So today, as you guys have seen our teaser video, we got a lot of connections that we want to show to you from our research. So now none of this is financial advice. We're not paid to create any of this. We're here trying to inspire other citizens to do their homework, to start learning about innovative technology that's reforming the globe, industries worldwide, that's changing industries worldwide. And so we're going to cover a lot of connections. I'm going to share some research threads where you guys can use to study and go research yourselves, because don't just trust random people on the internet for information. Token, I would like you can say your bid, and then we can get started.
All right, yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone again for hopping into our weekly space. And as Citizen said, this week we're going to be covering all about connections between these networks and basically these regulated crypto ecosystems, because there's a lot that kind of just gets buried away to show how deep these connections with these networks go in regards to our regulated legacy systems. And that's what's really going to drive the whole corporate and business adoption. And of course, that's where the money's really made. So we'll be looking at some things like connections to some legacy giants like R3, Oracle, ITFA, and a lot of others. So hopefully you guys get some good information out of this. And yeah, let's get started.
And also make sure you guys take some notes. Or, well, it will be recorded too, but there's a lot of important partnerships that we're connecting together here that, not many people even talk about or even know completely exist. We're also going to talk a little bit about some global standards in the traditional finance space, which is ISO TC 307 and ISO 222, and how that relates to some utility crypto networks. We're also going to talk a little bit about central bank digital currencies, about the Digital Pound Foundation, Digital Euro Association. We're going to talk about some regulated exchanges like LCX and SDX, which is SIX Digital Asset Exchange. And then we're also going to speak about the traditional trade finance space with the global shipping and industry. So, yeah, Token, what would you like to start off with?
Do you want to start off with just XRP and Quant? And maybe the whole Digital Pound, Digital Euro? Yeah.
Let's do it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here, like you said, the Digital Pound Foundation and the Digital Euro Association, they have ties with Quant Network, which uses Overledger for interoperability between crypto and digital DLT networks. And also, the Digital Pound Foundation has ties with XRP, Avalanche, ETN, and a couple other networks where it's a consortium. So the Digital Pound Foundation is a consortium of high-value players throughout the traditional finance space and banking industry, creating a digital pound for the UK.
Yeah, so the Digital Pound is one of the organizations in the space that I guess you could say are really doing something that's really connected to traditional finance and pushing us towards like this new technology of CBDCs. And beyond just crypto companies that are partnered in this consortium, there's some pretty big tech companies. So Accenture, which I'm sure a lot of you guys have probably heard of, and then they're actually also connected to the Digital Euro Association.
Great point. I'm just going to pull up a thread here to share so people can see a little bit about the Digital Pound Foundation. Okay, so I just shared an article so you guys can see some of the head partnerships. And as if you guys click that link, you'll see in there there's Gilbert Verdian and Susan Friedman, who's a representative for Ripple, and Gilbert Verdian, who's he's the CEO of Quant Network, and that is the key to interoperability between DLT networks across the globe. That is one of the main players that's fixing the interoperability problem. And so just so you guys know that Quant is connected to LCX, which is a regulated centralized exchange. It's also connected to Constellation DAG. That's why they're in there. They've got a partnership. And they've got a lot of ties. So it's a company that you should be aware of and researching. Yeah, so they're the consortiums that are working on building these central bank digital currencies for the digital euro and the digital UK pound. And a lot of people don't know what CBDCs are, and they're central bank digital currencies. It's digital money. It's the next era of money that they are creating. So we're talking about innovation that is happening and changing every day. It's at the head of the forefront of the Industrial Revolution. That's what I like to say about that.
All right, yeah. So CBDCs are a fairly controversial topic just because it is something that's likely to take a lot of privacy away from your average retail citizens. But like, honestly, with all the development that's happening and the executive order that Biden had recently put out, if you've done your research, you'll know that this shit is coming, and there is a lot of value that's going to be transferred from our current fiat legacy system into this new space. And a lot of these organizations are going to be the ones front running it. And luckily, we're seeing a lot of these utility networks that we're researching and most likely invested in taking part in this huge change.
Yeah, 100%. And then also another thing is, so for me reading these CBDC documents and watching some webinars, I know a lot of people say it's going to remove our privacy, but the main priority when I'm listening to these consortiums of players that are building them, they're talking about protecting privacy. They want to make it so there is an anonymity layer that protects the individual user's privacy compared to having a centralized party having all their information, et cetera, et cetera. So they're not going to put CBDC, they're not going to completely eliminate cash. Cash is always going to be around. It's just going to be to complement cash for digital transactions in the back end of their traditional banking system to eliminate friction. And so, yeah, but they do talk about focusing on protecting the privacy. So when they do launch this, it's not going to invade people's privacy. It's going to act like cash as well. So I have seen that as a main priority in a lot of these documents that I've been reading.
Yeah, and since we're talking about how a bunch of these other countries, well, most of these countries are looking to build a CBDC within their respective jurisdictions, let's talk about sort of the interoperability and how this new globalized financial system will work. And I'm sure there's a certain project most of us are thinking of that can help with all this.
Yeah, I could think of two for interoperability. So we have Quant, with their overledger, their operating system layer, and then there's also XRP, Ripple's partner Interledger. So where there's the Interledger protocol, and that's an interoperability layer for moving between payments. So you can send a Bitcoin payment to an Ethereum address, and that Interledger provides interoperability between those addresses. But yeah, let's stick with Quant. Let's talk about Quant. You want to talk about bring up some connections?
Yeah, let's focus on Quant's connections first, I guess. So first, I guess we'll with SIA.
Yeah, let's talk about SIA Bank. SIA Bank is a European bank. Go ahead, token.
All right, so SIA is a fintech company that's focused on financial services around the world. So they've got connections to a bunch of financial institutions, whether that be funds or central banks. So they've said to have over 550 banks connected to them, and they're partnered with Quant to allow for interoperability between the, all these banks, DLTs, and systems to kind of interoperate and work together. And they've actually successfully already done this. So back in here, let me just pull up.
I just shared it for everyone.
Okay.
There's some connections that I just shared in the pinned tweet on here, and it's talking about SIA successfully implemented Quant's interoperability solution Overledger with 580 nodes across the European region. And now SIA Chain uses Quant's Overledger, and they can interoperate between RippleNet, between any DLT network for their bank chain.
Yeah, and then to add on to SIA, they have this one project they were working on for a while called Project Spunta, and I see Citizens just shared something about that. But essentially, it's 100 banks in Italy that went live on a blockchain, and they claim to have solved the interoperability solution. And as we know, as I just said, Spunta is connected to SIA, which is of course connected to Quant.
Yeah. And so I also just shared in the pinned tweet for you guys, so you guys can see how the UK government works with Quant. So in there, I've highlighted things that I found through our dives, where it's talking about how the UK uses Overledger for an interoperability solution. And so the UK is one of the countries that's completely ahead of the game. They're leading the industrial revolution and going with pro cryptocurrency laws and innovation. And so in there you could see some of the just how Quant connects with the UK Gov.
Yeah, and then so Quant's not just working at interoperating DLTs within the financial sector, but then they're also looking to just basic interoperability between ledgers just across any sort of technology. So it could be, I'm probably skipping a bit ahead here, but they're looking to interoperate data with Constellation network at building smart cities, but then also they're partnered with Oracle as their primary interoperability solution for Oracle's blockchain platform.
Exactly, and that's funny that you moved on to that, because I just shared Oracle uses Quant for its business enterprises and partners interoperability. And so Oracle is the largest database management company in the world. And they have over 132,000 employees, $40 billion of revenue in 2021, and they have thousands of partners worldwide. And Oracle uses Quant for interoperability. So if you're an Oracle partner and you want to interoperate between these new nascent DLT networks, well, guess what? You got 3 lines of code. So Quant Network, you can put in 3 lines of code in a computer. It will pull up Overledger, which is an operating system for any enterprise or banking partner, and they can put that 3 lines of code in, and they can send an XRP payment. They can send an Ethereum payment. They can interoperate with Constellation DAG. They can move value between any of these networks flawlessly. And they can even connect to central bank digital currencies. So Quant is a heavy hitter with the Digital Pound Foundation and the DEA that we were talking about earlier, and the connector. It's the DLT connector for the world, and that's why in our intro video I put Quant at the center, because it seems that it's the center that connects it all.
Yeah, so Quant is doing a lot more than just the space of this digital asset revolution, which I talk a lot about, because blockchain and DLT, I guess, did in a sense start off with the great financial collapse. So it's always kind of been revolved around that, as we've seen with things like DeFi. But it's really something like, the reason it's called the fourth industrial revolution is because it's going to disrupt so many industries across the economy. And there's consortiums and organizations like Hyperledger, for example, which we'll get into in a moment, that are seeing this and building the infrastructure for blockchain and distributed ledgers to be properly utilized and actually change how these industries are going about and doing their business today.
Totally, and I just shared an infographic there that I just tweeted out today, but it's like there's so much more to blockchain and DLT than just the mainstream hype tokens of Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Shiba, Ethereum. You know, like that's the main stuff in the limelight. But if you really dig down and research, you can find specific ones that are actually just putting in work. They're not bragging about price. They're not telling people to buy their assets. They're literally just building, and the price action will come because they have different use cases, whether it's digital documents and trade finance, whether it's data protection pipelines, whether it's interoperability, whether it's micropayments, there's so many different things that are being revolutionized. And that's what the fourth industrial revolution is. It's industries evolving to the max capacity of where technology is like, damn.
Yeah, exactly. I see we've got a requested speaker. Did you want to just let him on real quick?
Yeah, we'll let him on quick.
All right, Brad.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Hey, what's up, Brad?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Welcome. Fantastic. And you?
I'm good, thank you. Where are you guys from? Sorry, I came in a bit late.
Canada.
Both from Canada, yeah.
Canadians.
Nice. I'm from South Africa.
Right on.
I just had a question. I did come in a bit late, so I'm not sure. I just came in when you started mentioning Quant and when the link to that document got put on the pinned tweets. But I just wanted to hear your thoughts on XRP. I'm not so familiar with Quant. I have heard about it, and I had a little brief look at that document. But what are your thoughts on that? Would you think they'd be competing against one another, or yeah?
No, I like XRP. I like Quant, and I don't think they're competing because what Quant does. So XRP is made for settling payments, micropayments, central bank digital currencies, a debt ledger, and Quant is for interoperability between DLT networks. So Quant is the operating system for traditional finance to interoperate between the networks. So Quant can connect a bank, their overledger can connect a bank to an XRP payment. So anybody that uses Quant can send an XRP payment if they wanted to. So Quant is basically helping XRP because they're creating an on and off ramp for banks to send and receive XRP payments.
Thank you so much for explaining that to me.
Yes, no problem. And feel free to take a look at my threads, and there's write-ups on XRP, Quant, XDC, stuff like that, just from my research I put together for the community so other people can get a chance to see things buried in the deep.
Cool. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to be a follower now.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Okay, so let's get back onto it here. So another thing here I think we should talk about is ISO TC 307. We're on the Quant. So the head of Quant, he's one of the main people that created this standard. ISO TC 307 is an interoperability standard for traditional banking around blockchain, DLT. One sec here, I'm just pulling it up. So in their focus is standardization of blockchain technologies and distributed ledger technologies. And they're working on building standards that 53 countries around the world are a part of following that standard around blockchain and DLT. And some of the main organizations that are on that board or a part of that committee are Quant, IBM, Microsoft, HSBC, Sony Europe, Chartered Association of Certified Accountants, MIT Connection Science, the UK government. And those are all building this ISO TC 307 standard. And that is a traditional finance standard that nobody talks about in blockchain or DLT because they're unaware of it. There's nobody out there in the mainstream YouTubers that are like, oh, ISO TC 307 is going to take us to the moon, guys. Where's the Lambos? No, because it's boring, it's regulated, not a lot of people want to learn about what's going on in the back end of the traditional finance system. Token, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just add this quickly before we let Dagnum up, because I see you requested.
Yeah, we got to get that guy
Definitely
up here.
excited for that, yeah. But
beauty.
yeah, what I wanted to add is just these ISO standards. So I'm sure most of you guys have heard of ISO 2200 before. So that's like XRP, XLM, Algorand, IOTA. I think I may be missing one more, but these are the kind of standards you want to see in the projects that you're researching and investing in, because these are ties to some of the largest organizations and standard setting bodies in the whole world. Like, to reach mass adoption, there's going to be rules and regulations put in place, and to see some projects that are connected with things like ISO and starting up talks of starting up CBDCs with other countries, like, that's huge. That's what we want to see when you're researching a certain project, because that shows showing adoption, like, from corporates and businesses and governments rather than retail adoption buying up apes, which I'm sure you guys can tell which sort of adoption would flow in more capital, but also just be more utilized in our general economy.
100%. Good points. And just before we let Dagnum speak here, just wanted to say, guys, I shared just some information there on ISO TC 307, so you guys can dive into that and just read what it's about and just see, there are standards being put in place. One day these standards, this is where regulations and legislation will form around, is pushing these standards and getting rid of the shit coins and the pump and dumps and the scam coins out there. Because once regulation comes in, we're going to see death to the liquidity of these shit coins that are pump and dumps. They're going to regulate centralized exchanges, and then that's the on and off ramps. So Dagnum, come on up, man. Put your mic on, and you're shut up.
Yeah, no, thanks for having these spaces. It's important to just educate the masses, because just like you were talking about, it's just filled with absolute garbage, especially anybody from the top 10 influencers. They're just peddling bullshit. But one thing I wanted to sort of clarify, when you were talking about the partnership with Quant and Constellation, just so everybody's clear, it has nothing to do with interoperability. DAG achieves interoperability all on its own. So this partnership with Quant has absolutely nothing to do with Quant and how they achieve interoperability. And that gets it confuses a lot of people sometimes. Same thing with Link. Link is the data oracle, right? And we're also partnered with Link. But Constellation oracleizes data at the edge. So like our partnership with Link has nothing to do with oracleization. We achieve data oracleization all on our own at the edge. So specifically with Quant, it's about this smart city integration and creating these digital twins, right? So like their state channel will be like a testing environment. I just wanted to kind of make that clear distinction, because a lot of times people think that, like, especially with Quant and just how massive they are in the market, it's like, and everybody knows Quant is the interoperability dudes. So when they see that we're partnered with them, they think that this is how we're achieving interoperability. But that has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's about the data, the data protection, right? Like the state channels.
Yeah.
Produce the data. They collect the data, and good job clarifying that. That's much appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, because it's only as good as the data that you have, right?
Exactly. We need to make sure that it's not spoofed or changed, and right. So also, DAG, the state channels can clean that data. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing that you were talking about is, the standards and regulation. Something that, again, it seems to just go past a lot of people. especially in this space, it seems like it's filled with so many people that have really, they're really narrow-sighted. They find something that they're super bullish on, and like that's it, right? So like, I've seen everywhere. I don't know why, but all over Twitter lately, the 2020 standards, right? The ISO standards, and everybody's super focused on XRP, right? But look at who is part of the advisory board for Constellation. I mean,
Token shared that the other day. One of the ISO 222
I
guys.
found that like a while back. Mike Sigil, right?
Yeah. So it's like, people are just sleeping all over the place. Like when I first got into crypto, I first got into crypto because somebody told me about Constellation, because I was big, super bullish on data stuff, right? The first thing that I did when I heard about it, I went and started researching, because I was like, okay, they can't be the only ones doing this, right? There has to be other people that are doing it. So the first thing that I did was I started to educate myself about directed acyclic graphs, right? And I found, not surprisingly, there was many companies that operated directed acyclic graphs. So then I wanted to know why this one was different, right? So it's just the same thing. But this is why these spaces are like super important, right? Because I don't think that there's enough education out there. And mass adoption and with these standards is going to happen 100%. Some people are afraid of standards and regulations, but if anything, they make the space better.
Totally.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you want to say something?
No, you can go first.
Okay, I was just gonna say, so just like to thank Dagnum for adding on to the points that standards are really what's going to be driving the mass adoption of this space for this technology to actually be utilized and stuff. Because again, people talk about retail adoption happening with apes all the time, but what really is going to drive the demand for these assets up is the fact that corporations and governments are using them, which we are seeing with some utility networks, as Dagnum brought up Constellation, that's being used by the Department of Defense at the moment. So it's things like that, like Quant being used by central banks with SIA, that is going to drive more adoption and more acceptance into this space.
Exactly. And so just for everyone to let you guys know, since we're talking about connections, I just shared in the pinned tweets, the last couple tweets. One is on threat vectors, on automation and IoT devices. And then the other ones is straight up connections that I've mapped out from researching Constellation DAG and some of their partnerships that you guys can check out. That one's a technical mind map that I put together, that I've mapped out, so you guys can visually see some of the connections. And then research. There's a lot of condensed research in those threads that you guys can spend to learn about DAG and how it's changing big data. And I just wanted to put that out there, since we're giving you guys the connections, the buried connections that the mainstream media ain't talking about. And so I hope it inspires some of you guys to actually put some time in, because I think that research thread, I probably spent 30 hours at least digging through stuff and writing it up to get it all pieced together. So hope it helps.
And it's one thing I want to add is it's really interesting that these documents are just kind of like out there for us to all look at, because in a sense these should be technically, I don't know if I'd say confidential, but they're supposed to be like somewhat private information that banks are keeping. So things like Project Jasper, for example, which is a CBDC that's working on being built in Canada. That stuff, most of retail just isn't going to give a fuck about, because it's boring stuff, like in the grand scheme of things, right? Like, what do most people care about? Not the future digitalization of money. So the fact that we're researching these things and seeing what's connected to them is already like a huge step forward from what most of retail is doing in terms of getting into this space. Because the way I see it, there's two paths you can take when you first go down this space. There's the whole hype Bitcoin and Ethereum route that you can take, where you're just buying into the hype and the belief that there's utility in these networks. And then there's this other path, which I'm sure we're all walking down, is the utility one, seeing how these technologies are actually going to be used and what connections they have in the background that will play a huge role towards the future when these networks become mass adopted.
Exactly. Good points. Yeah, it's all about, finding the traditional connections and find the ones that have built the roots. And, because, once these roots are built, regulations are going to work around those big corporations and enterprises that have the billions of dollars that are saving billions of dollars from automating and digitalizing their systems, because, a lot of the systems are paper-based, they're slow, expensive. Look at the bank wire transfer system that's happening today. If you guys don't know about the correspondent banking system, if you want to send $50 to a friend in Africa or a third world country, it costs you $50. It takes 5 to 7 business days to settle to the other side, and it's expensive, it's slow, and it's broken. And I'll share a diagram, because if anybody doesn't know what the correspondent bank system, it's the legacy banking system that you use. If you go to the bank today and you're like, hey, I want to send money to Japan, they're gonna be like, okay, it's $50. It takes 5 to 7 business days, and there's no tracking. We can't tell you when it gets to the other side. You just have to call the other bank and figure out when it was settled. That is what the current banking system is right now with cross-border payments. And that is why Bitcoin, and that's why these networks to transfer value were created, is to get around that slow, broken correspondent banking system.
Yeah, so what Citizen said, the fact that our current banking system just does not live up to the technology we have today. Like, you can send almost anything across the internet and it settles in about a second, like emails, images, videos, whatever. But the current hypertext transfer protocol was never made to hold or transfer any value. And that's what this whole space of blockchains and distributed ledgers are kind of showing, that we can now, it's the internet of value. You can transfer value across anywhere in the world and it settles in a second. And this has been seen really apparent also due to the fact that there's not a middleman just able to gatekeep everything now, because from the whole Canada trucking convoy to the war between Ukraine and Russia, now we're seeing crypto be kind of at the forefront of all this, where people are seeing the power of crypto donations and how, one, you don't need to wait 3 to 5 days for it to settle, but also, two, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can send money and support a cause.
Yeah, exactly. And cheaply. Well, and like the one thing I want to point out is to all the people that are in third world countries like Africa and where they don't have traditional banking, the system, there's villages, there's communities that do not have the infrastructure, and their dollars are just printed out of the ass, and it's hyperinflated. And some have to go walk 2 hours to an ATM, to a bank to make a wire transfer, and that's not fair. And then that's where DLT comes in, where you can now, whip out your phone. You don't even need an intermediary, where you could transact value with a scanning a QR code, and it costs fraction of a cent, and anybody can participate in the global economy. It's not just because we're lucky in the first world countries that we have access. We can go 5 minutes to a bank. Well, there's people in the third world countries that don't have that. And that is the thing, because there's 1.7 billion people that are unbanked in the world. 1.7 billion people that do not have bank accounts. And that's where tokenization, DLT is changing the game, because it's allowing anybody with a mobile phone and access to the internet to participate in global trade.
Yeah, exactly. The whole economic and financial inclusion thing. That's definitely going to be huge, because at the moment we're talked about the fact that third world countries suffer from this the most in a couple of our other spaces, but just to really emphasize on it, like last space we had someone from Africa telling us about how the average monthly salary for someone there was $200. Now, if you take that average salary and say, I don't know, that person wants to send money abroad to family, a $50 international payment fee, that's 25% of their monthly income just gone for sending money abroad.
Yeah, and that's not fair.
No,
That's not
ridiculous.
fair. So before we move on, I see we got two questions that we should answer quickly, and then
let's do that.
Carry on to the next topic there.
Let's go with Medici first. I know he's been waiting for a minute.
Yeah, Medi, come on up, my friend. How you doing?
Oh, good. Just saw you pulled me up. I just wanted to highlight, I think going forward, we're going to see a lot more KYC stuff, and that start to enter in the space just with the talk regulations and everything that I think is starting to be more highlighted right now. Could you guys actually see foreign exchanges be slightly like blemished away from like certain countries and KYC play a lot more of an integral role?
Totally.
I think KYC will, like in Biden's most recent executive order, like there was a lot of talks on the whole KYC AML thing. And I think for the space to actually be mass adopted by both retail and institutions, you're going to need mass adoption, because since this is a globalized financial system, countries are going to need to know where their money is flowing in and out of. And in addition to that, they just need to see KYC stuff to prevent like illicit finance and just basic security things, because there's a lot that can go wrong if it just remains like anonymous and everything, like how crypto kind of is at the moment. And just like with any technology, there's some form of KYC involved, and crypto's really not going to be any different in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, exactly. I totally see KYC and AML, anti-money laundering laws. So, like, I think that's why most of DeFi is going to fail. Most of DeFi is going to get shut down. These projects that don't KYC, that don't AML, that's where the reckoning, the regulations come in. Anything that doesn't have KYC, AML, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. I don't know what they're going to do with wallets. I hope they don't touch, Ledger wallets and that, cold storage wallets, because there's no way to KYC or AML one of those. But I think that's too much over their head to regulate that. But I know definitely for exchanges and the DeFi side of things, that is going to cause a demise in the current DeFi protocols.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add on to the whole DeFi thing and what the governments are doing. So if anyone's actually read the executive order, you'll see that they really actually haven't done much. They're just getting into learning what like this whole space does. So there's probably still going to be a lot of time for things like non-KYC DeFi to still exist, but eventually I do think most of these DeFi networks will have to, in a sense, implement some form of KYC or AML, just because you can't be a functioning business and openly launder money. That doesn't work in any sort of economy.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, with the sums of money that are being moved around, nowhere else in history, at least since we've adopted technology, are you allowed to do business with someone who you don't know who they are. And, I truly think just KYC, and I also think there's going to be a lot of institutions that go through standards that, they have to have a banking license to move money around. Or I personally could even foresee these things aren't really meant for us. Maybe they're supposed to be held by an institution, and they're not supposed to be privately cold walleted in the future without a KYC attached to your wallet or something like that. But I just don't even think a lot of this stuff is priced in yet, and by the time it does acquire the information that values it high enough, I don't think it's meant for us to really custody ourselves anyways. That's just my take.
No, that's a really good point. Like, a lot of these are called utility tokens that are being utilized by actual institutions. We're literally just holding them as, like, from an investment standpoint, on the belief that they'll go up due to corporate demand. Like, yes, they're great utility tokens and assets, but like honestly, what are we holding these assets for? It's very unlikely we'll be actually using these networks to the extent that they do.
Supply and demand.
Exactly.
That's why I hold.
We're just part of the demand side, but
No.
I see Script's got
Yeah.
something to say. He's been waiting for a while now. So.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, Script, welcome aboard, my friend. And add a speaker. Here we go. You're the next contestant on The Utility is Right. Okay, here we go. Script.
Yo, how's it going, guys?
It's good. How about you?
Yeah, good, thanks. I've kind of been in the space about a year now. I think I kind of got into the utility coins through kind of XRP originally, and ended up down that rabbit hole. Since then, really trying to get my head around. I mean, it's a lot to obviously. I mean, some of you guys are pretty clued up, so it's great kind of listening to you guys have these chats. If I was to look at, say, the Digital Pound Foundation, for an example, with Avalanche, Quant, and Ripple sort of involved, how would they kind of work together, or how do you sort of foresee that playing out as a sort of end product? I guess, how would they kind of work together?
So I think how a lot of these, like say the Digital Pound Foundation, for example, work together is they're not necessarily connecting all their networks, as in the Avalanche ecosystem with XRP Ledger with Quant's Overledger, but more so they're working together to form ideas and brainstorm about how a central bank digital, or a digital pound in this case, would work, rather than trying to combine all their networks and have it, say, run on Avalanche and then have it transfer between value through Overledger.
Right. Yeah.
And like it's I think just I want to just add on there. So yeah, it's a consortium of a bunch of great minds putting in ideas to make it work. And then like I watched a Digital Pound Foundation video, and they said they're not going to use just one specific solution. They're taking ideas from all, and then they're going to combine it and see what they come up with. But I also can visualize, once they get a working proof of concept for the digital pound, well, maybe all those other members that are part of that foundation, because the world is so vast, so large, there's different CBDC solutions that are being created, on XRP, on Quant, and so everyone will have different partners around the world. And so, we'll see layer 2, we'll see CBDCs on the XRP ledger that will interoperate with all the other ones through different countries. And I think it's just the Digital Pound Foundation is just a consortium. They're putting the ideas together. And, one day we'll see CBDC solutions on multiple networks that will all interoperate.
Yeah, I think it's that's where these regulated partnerships are important, right? Because up until I would say this year, DLT just wasn't technically up to snuff to handle all of the grandiose ideas, right? But now you have lots of different technology companies that are coming out of the woodwork that are going to put out some amazing stuff, right? Like one of the consortiums that Constellation was involved with, they helped write the DLT data sharing standards for autonomous vehicles. Now, are we at the point right now today where autonomous vehicles are driving around all over the place? No. Is that going to happen? Yes. And it's important to set standards early on, so you're not blindsided when these technologies are just out in the real world and you don't have any regulation, you don't have any rules, you don't have any standards. Standards are an important spot to where you start from. It sets a clear path of where we're going to go from here. So I think the stuff with fudding about regulations is noise, personally.
Totally, because standards is the foundation, is to eliminate, basically like the double spend problem, so people aren't backstepping on, with global standards, you have countries that can all build with the same key thing in mind, which is interoperating, so we eliminate the digital island problem. The digital island problem is having siloed networks that can't communicate with other networks. And so that's where these standards and regulations are going to come in, because it's going to create foundations for the globe. And that's why it's a big thing.
Yeah, so while we're on the topic of standards, it like I've been saying this whole time, it's what will drive the adoption, because it's going to be what gives all these organizations around the world clarity to actually begin utilizing and building on these networks. And I know Dagnum just mentioned Mobi, so I might as well add more onto it. But for anyone who doesn't know, Mobi is a consortium that's working with a bunch of companies, not just crypto ones, but like Accenture, BMW, Honda, Quant, Ford,
GM,
a bunch, GM, a bunch of other ones. But they're working on build the standards and bring to life the vision of self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles. And this just goes to show even more to what blockchain and DLT can really bring. Like, autonomous vehicles, that's so far out the spectrum from what everyone thinks crypto can be used for, and that's so far just digital art and decentralized finance.
Yeah, and well, like another thing, since we're talking about autonomous vehicles, I don't know if you all have heard of the term smart cities. And if you haven't, there's cities out in Japan that are being built from the ground up, and everything is autonomous. Everything has sensors communicating with each other. So in these smart cities, they're going to have only autonomous vehicles. And these autonomous vehicles are going to be all connected. They're going to be sharing data with each other through 5G. 5G capabilities of data sharing is through the roof. It's like thousands of gigabytes per second, and they're all going to be on the same grid, being able to tell when one's close to another, or they can all be in sync with the lights. It's just a straight up a city ecosystem of everything communicating data within each other. And it's cities of the future where the wealthy are going to be living. And they just, you could take your car with these autonomous vehicles. Say you're at work, you can program your car so it drives to the car wash, gets a car wash done, boom, and then it comes back and parks for itself, and then you come back out to a nice clean car. And that is what we're talking about, cities of the future, autonomous vehicles. It's happening, and it's crazy.
And distributed ledger technology, because of the immutability of it, is going to be the perfect way, because you don't want somebody spoofing data into your smart car or, hacking it, right? I mean, it has to be immutable. I mean, and this is why I got into crypto right now, because we're at the point, and we're still early, but we're at the point now where things are going to start to change. And you're going to see some amazing things happen over the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And
exactly. Oh, did you? I wanted to add on to that.
You add on to it first. I added on first last time.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then think about a city bus. You have an autonomous city bus. You have a bunch of people's lives in there. If that gets hacked, if that was going through HTTPS, somebody could hack that signal, and they can drive that bus into a fucking wall if they wanted to. But if you have the data transmission on a distributed ledger technology that's completely immutable, you could tell that it's not been spoofed. It's unhackable. It can't be changed, and that is the important thing, because there's people's lives at risk when it comes to autonomous vehicles and these sensors. So that's why it's important to have immutable ledger for when it comes to stuff like that.
I was going to add on also. So obviously we believe that this is probably going to happen in stages, depending on, foundationally, like Constellation data, that's only going to keep growing and going and going. But also payment rails, I think you have to figure out the back end before we can really, really, truly get everyone banked and everything really seamless on front end. So being around you guys up here now, if you could pick out two projects that would start foundationally starting to change sooner than later to set the pace for everything else to kind of come into place digitally, what would your two projects be?
I feel like there's as I said, there's so many sectors that blockchain and DLT is kind of flowing into. It's kind of hard to just pick two projects specifically that are doing that, just because there's certain networks doing different things, right? Like XRP is focused on really the banking and finance world. XDC is focused on global trade, and then DEG's focused on interoperability and stuff. So it really depends on what sector of the economy you're really trying to look at.
Yeah, I can't just pick two because there's, quants for interoperability, DAGs for protecting data, XDC I love for trade finance and supply chain tracking, XRP, wholesale debt ledger, CBDCs, micropayments. If I could pick five, I'd pick those five.
But also with that in mind, just because of the fact that crypto did start from finance, I really wouldn't be surprised if the first thing crypto really got mass adopted into was the finance world.
Well, and with the SEC lawsuit that's going to be coming to an end here, I think we'll finally get clarity for XRP.
Oh, that will be huge.
And the red flags behind the SEC. Me and XX, you guys can see him in there. We're about to drop in about 1 minute here. We spent 20 hours in the last couple days mapping out physical evidence that is going against the ETH free pass on the XRP lawsuit there. And we took all the documents from US crypto law from their thing, and we mapped out all the connections just to contribute to showing some of the red flags that should be investigated behind the SEC. So I just wanted to point that out there because I said yesterday we're going to launch it at 2 and it's almost 2 here. So be ready for a really massive tweet that's about to launch here.
Yeah, while we're on the whole topic of the SEC and Ethereum free pass, you guys probably mentioned this in whatever you guys are putting out, but did you see the fact that it was basically like proof that Ethereum was kind of corrupted by JP Morgan with their affiliations with like Consensus, and how JP Morgan had like bought a stake in them, which also would include like Infura and MetaMask.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's crazy the stuff that's being unfolded. And you know what's hilarious is you have the internet and you have all these people that want the truth, and that the truth is now coming into play and showing. And then there's another paper, like if you guys really want to dig into the some corruption behind Ethereum, there's a paper called Flash Boys 2.0, and it's a university thesis paper from 2019, I believe. And it's talking about why the Ethereum gas fees are so high is because you have bots that are trading with each other that's causing congestion on the network to increase the fees. And it's absolutely hilarious. And, if a business builds on Ethereum, they go broke. But people still think it's the future of the enterprise. But no, that's just the mainstream narrative. But that's just my opinion. Don't trust me. Read that paper. It's called Flash Boys 2.0. And I think it opened my eyes, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people's opinions on Ethereum are just kind of skewed in the fact that it's technically it had the first mover advantage of being a whole ass ecosystem with smart contracts and applications built on there. So there's definitely a bit of, I guess, struggle with having people understand and having an open mind to the fact that there's these networks that can do what Ethereum is doing, but better with lower fees, higher scalability, and even more decentralization in some cases.
So I was eating real quick. I was trying to chime in with projects that I would pay attention to. I still think, I've said this since I've been on this space, NFTs are going to be the gateway to crypto. Businesses and corporations know exactly what's about to happen. You're going to be able to tokenize your house. You're going to be able to tokenize your car. like a digital receipt, a coupon. I mean, there was a tweet that went out, like pretty much every Fortune 500 business is getting into the NFT space, and I would absolutely be paying attention to the Void. The Void marketplace is going to be the global hub for all NFTs. So it's not about the digital art stuff, right? That's cool. And there's always going to be a market for that kind of stuff, those niche markets. But there's a way bigger picture here, right? It's this $90+ trillion gross domestic product that people keep ignoring. It's going to be tokenized.
No, 100%. Yeah, like I keep saying this, but digital art, one, doesn't do NFTs justice in the fact that they can be so much more than just digital JPEGs, because essentially it's just the tokenization of assets in play, where we're seeing like monkeys being tokenized, pictures of monkeys being tokenized at the moment, but soon enough in the future we're going to see things like rental properties, documents, and a whole bunch of other things that can be split between ownership becoming tokenized and show the true proof of value and ownership right on a blockchain.
100%. Like the NFTs, like you said, used as a receipt, used in the land title system. The land title system where I live is so broken. When you transfer a house, it takes a week. It's all in paper. You have to pay $700 for a notary. Then you have to pay other fees to get it transferred. NFTs are much more than just beautiful drawings. It's a tokenization of a single asset that has unique properties.
Absolutely. And it's the biggest elephant in the room.
For sure. We're definitely going to see a lot of changes and growth to the NFT space in the next couple of years. Like, I honestly think in 5 years or so, the whole concept of NFTs being digital art thing it'll still exist, but I think it's going to be a lot smaller of a sector in the whole aggregate NFT market.
Yeah, I think so. Do you guys want to move on to the next topic of some trade finance connections, or what did you want to cover next here?
Well, I mean, the topic of the space is still covering connections, so yeah, I guess we should probably move on there. We've got about 25 minutes or so left, so yeah, let's move on to trade finance, and then maybe we'll do some more of LCX and DAG.
Yeah, sure, sounds good. Okay, guys, so this is my favorite niche because I've done so many farting hours of research, is the trade finance industry, supply chain, shipping, global trade. So a couple things that I want to start off with here is, so this is in reference to ITFA and XDC network. And ITFA is International Trade Forfeiting Association. We're talking about in the supply chain, everything's paper. 99% of the supply chain is paper. And well, what does that mean? It means it's expensive, it's slow. They say to settle an invoice, it can take up to 3 weeks to settle an invoice. The paper it changes hands. So say an invoice coming from China all the way to Canada here, that invoice and the papers for that shipment can change hands up to 200 times. Paper can get lost, can get damaged. It has to be verified from customs. It has to be verified by all these parties to make sure that everything is correct. And it's a very high cost. So they say, from my research, 20% of all shipping costs in the world is from paper, the use of paper. And that's ridiculous. 20%. They say the use of paper is more expensive than moving the containers all the way from China to Canada. And why am I talking about paper? Because it's one of the biggest problems that nobody talks about. When you look at a paper document, there's no data points. You don't get data points from it. But when you move everything from a paper document to a digital document, you get over 200 data points on that invoice that can be attached to a distributed ledger that AI can sort through, can now use machine readable content from an invoice. And now with using digital documents, that creates automation, that creates, using smart contracts will literally remove all this paper, moving hands, all the expense. And it's a huge shift that not a lot of people are talking about. Only the innovators, I learned, that are building. But yeah, it's just it's a hidden thing. But there's some blockchain networks that can attach a digital document to it, and that, for example, is XDC network. They have a company called Inigio that is built. It's an application layer for banks. They work with Swift. I'm going to share some information in a thread here. And what they do is they can attach an invoice to a block on the blockchain. And so when you're sending that invoice, it's attached to the XDC network, and that can be sent anywhere in the world. It's interoperable with any other DDocs, digital document standards. And it costs fraction of a cent and settles within 2 seconds. And now compare that using a digital, and every change that is made to that invoice is documented on the blockchain.
Yeah, this is going to be huge. Absolutely. Like, the biggest things are microtransactions, microprocessing, and micropayments. And to piggyback off of your point, I pinned up at the top a video. This was actually working. This was back in like 2019. So they're showing the founders of Constellation are showing them in real time do their precise latitude and longitude locations while driving down the freeway on chain. And what a lot of people missed about this video is he's doing it from a phone. So he's giving real-time data validation from a node running on his phone. So you'll be able to track any digital asset on chain.
100%. They call that the digital twin. So now it's going from just having a physical thing where now you align, attaching the data to a blockchain, and then that shows exactly where your physical object is in transit. So, like, going back to the supply chain shipping, is now you have it attached to a blockchain at every stop along the way. When it changes hands and it gets scanned by customs or whatever, you know exactly where it is. Oh, it just entered US customs. Oh, it just entered Canadian customs. It's time stamped, it's on there, it's trackable. And guess what? It's on an auditable ledger for the rest of its life. No more storing all these paper copies. No more having to ship paper copies across the world. It's being stored on a blockchain that is an immutable ledger for the rest of its life.
Yeah, and to piggyback off your point about the paper, I don't know where the study is, but so this was years ago, way before pandemic. Japan shut a lot of their people shut down their working days to a 4-day work week, but they paid their people for 5 days. And the reason why is because they figured out if they closed the office, the amount of money that they would save just on paper alone would more than pay for having these people a paid day off.
That's actually ridiculous.
Crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. I also read a statistic here. I just got to find it. So this was from the G7, and they're talking about digitalizing the trade industry as a whole. They said if you took every year, there's around 4 billion documents in global trade. And if you stacked all that paper on top of each other, that stack would be 520,000 meters high, and it would consist of about 500,000 trees. And then that's not even including, you know, the costs for that. And since we're talking about this, I want to talk to you guys, tell you guys about an initiative from the top that the ICC, the International Chambers of Commerce, is pushing this initiative. It's called MLETR, and that stands for Model Law on Electronic Transfer Records. And what that is, it's a standardization of digital documents that they are pushing around jurisdictions around the world. There's about 6 jurisdictions in the world right now that are MLETR compliant. And well, what does that mean? Well, MLETR compliant means that they can accept digital documents in their trade finance industry. It's written in the legislation. So all legislation around the world for jurisdictions in the trade and finance industry is based off a document from the 1800s. I think it's BOE 1882. And in that document, it says anything that's an invoice has to be in paper so it can be valid. So what this MLETR is, it's an update to that bill. It's an update to accept digital documents as valid, as a valid invoice. So that is something to watch, because guess what? Singapore, Dubai, what's it called? Bahrain or something. It's a small little place. But these are MLETR jurisdictions. And guess what? Just to cut February 25th, the UK, the United Kingdoms, accepted. They became an MLETR jurisdiction. They came out with this digital economy agreement, which puts MLETR, updates it into the legislation. So now the UK can send digital documents in global trade to Singapore and Dubai. And there's a select few networks that can maintain an MLETR compliant digital document. That involves CargoX. That's a trade finance platform that has MLETR documents that can meet that standard. Trade Trust. Trade Trust is a Singapore company that has a trade financing platform for digital documents. XDC network is also MLETR compliant through the ITFA DNI initiative, Digital Negotiable Instruments Initiative. And so that is some of the most deepest stuff that I can give to you guys to research, because there's a trade finance revolution going on with digital documents. Something to research, something to be aware of, because if you do your homework, you can see how it works and how this is going to transform global trade. And there are assets that are decentralized. It's not financial advice. There's decentralized assets that you can look into that are MLETR compliant, that you can send these digital invoices and you can buy those. And well, you know, one day when they're sending all these invoices back and forth on that network, it's going to bring in a lot of liquidity, blah, 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 blah. But it's something to do a lot of research. I got a lot of content on it on my thing because nobody else is talking about it. I think it's important.
And that's not something that's going to go away. I mean, you could totally see that as something that's going to keep getting more and more popular, especially with the narrative with going green and the carbon. And I mean, the paper stuff, I mean, I didn't even know about that. So I wrote that down. But I could totally see that as catching on. It's not going to stop with 2 countries. That's totally going to grow.
Totally. And the crazy thing is there's 6 countries. And guess what? There's 190 countries in the IMF that are partnered with the World Trade Organization. And it's just about them, these jurisdictions around the world, updating their legislation to accept digital documents in their trade finance side of things.
Yeah, like just the whole idea of what XDC is doing, working with all these regulators, like, and joining all these like consortia and organizations like the ITFA, TFD initiative, and even like being recognized by the World Trade Organization. This is what, like, this shows that this is one of those networks that aren't worried about regulations coming in, like how a lot of these other shitcoins are at the moment. Like, with what Citizens has just said, he's just shown you guys all the utility that just one of these networks are able to provide in terms of supply chain and digitalization of documents. And it's something that's being recognized by some of the top entities in that respective sector. So yeah, look for projects that are doing stuff along these lines, that are setting standards, abiding by standards, and not, your usual shit coins.
Exactly, and I just shared two things in the comment or in the pinned tweet here. So that the newest one, it's if you didn't get the memo, the ICC memo to governments and central banks on essential steps to safeguard trade finance operations. And I put the keywords in there to break it down easy for you guys so you could see, but it's a call to action to all governments worldwide to implement MLETR into their jurisdictions. And then the other one was picture examples. So you guys can visualize with your eyes the digital documents, the digital twin that we were talking about. Is because, in order to see what we're talking about, I want to give you visuals. So there you guys go. You could see how complex the trade finance industry is and why digitalization of documents and automation is very important for international trade.
Yeah, and just to add further on to XDC, their connections with regulated trade finance is one thing, but if you look at their team and look at some of the connections and history that the team has had, you guys will see just how, suitable they are for something of this scale. For example, Andre Casterman, he's one of the advisors at Zinfin Network, and he has some of the deepest connections with this industry, with over 24 years working at Swift, which I'm sure citizens can add further on to all the stuff that Andre's done and the whole team at XDC.
Yeah, so I just shared a thread of power connections that I've seen in 2021. And if you guys click that thread and you look at it, XDC Network, so there's a thing called the TFD Initiative, the Trade Finance Distribution Initiative. And it's an initiative to revolutionize global trade finance, and there's a bunch of tier 1 banks and small medium enterprises that are part of that consortium of the TFD Initiative. And that TFD Initiative has only one blockchain network that's involved in that initiative, and that is XDC Network. And if you guys click one of the first photos in there, I watched a webinar on blockchain technology for cross-border trade. This was August 16th, 2021. And well, who's involved in that? And well, there's Asian Development Bank, there's the UN, there's the International Chamber of Commerce. And if you guys didn't know, the ICC, they empower, I think, 1 billion employees. So they are the head of 1 billion employees worldwide. Look them up, they're a powerhouse, but they're talking about blockchain technology for cross-border trade. And this is where, MLETR comes in, and also, if you guys didn't know, in the trade finance industry, there's a thing called the trade finance gap. And that trade finance gap is the lack of funding small, medium enterprises, SMEs, have in global trade. So, for example, what an example of that is the trade finance gap is $1.8 billion in 2020. And then in 2022, it's now at $5 billion. I got a thread on it that I'll share. But that is lack of funding for companies worldwide. So they say 40% of small, medium enterprises that go for a loan get denied because, one, they don't have enough assets to get a loan on, or two, banks can't loan it. They don't have enough money to loan out to them for the trade finance industry. So that's a $5 trillion lack of funding for businesses around the world. And if you convert that into time, because, $5 trillion, us people in retail, we don't know what the fuck that looks like. So I converted it into time. So $1 equals 1 second. $5 trillion would be 157,000 years. That's how big the trade fund. That's $1 per second, 157,000 years, a lack of funding for businesses around the world. So what's coming is, with these digital documents, it's going to create, and we're dealing with these decentralized ecosystems, decentralized liquidity pools. So people can loan their tokens into a liquidity pool, a pool of tokens that small medium enterprises can borrow from. So if you're loaning your tokens to that pool, you're getting a percent APY, and if they're borrowing from it, they're paying a percent APY to take that loan out. And so that's what's coming in the trade finance industry, is the tokenization of invoices and digital assets for trade. And that will create a global liquidity pool to help close this trade finance gap. And that's my vision of the future. I wonder if I still have everyone, or did I just confuse everyone? Did that make sense?
Some of us are still here. Yeah, some of us are still here.
Yeah.
I realized we've got only about left or so. What do you think of just like having the community up and having them ask questions or share any points they've had?
Yeah, sounds great. Let's get some people. Anyone wants to pitch in, and
just raise your hands.
Well, I hope it's good info. I hope people are enjoying this regulated information, because we're just trying to get the stuff out there that the mainstream media is not talking about. We're not telling you to buy anything. I don't care. This is not financial advice. A reminder. We're just here doing our good deed to talk about things that we've researched in our niche that can give you guys ideas for research. So I'll also share a beginner thread that I have on XDC for people if they've never heard of XDC Network.
But yeah, if there weren't too many questions,
I see we got 4.
Got one. Yep,
damn right.
Oh, okay. XRP Nation. I think he was first up, so we'll let you up first.
Hey, Citizen. Hope all is well. Chiming in from California, United States. Wanted to say thank you for everything you guys have been doing. I sort of came onto your guys' world, I think on Twitter, maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I'm pretty new to following you guys, but just alone with MLETR, I love XDC and the Zinfin ecosystem, and I'm just saying thank you. Thanks for everything you guys do. It's a really big help.
Hell yeah, man! That's what inspires us is the fact that we take time to create this content just to inspire other citizens to put in work to research this stuff, because you know what? One day you might message me and be like, yo, that damn MLETR thing gave me a perspective that not many people could really see, and it might have changed my life. I don't know, but
Citizen,
yeah.
it has changed a massive part of my life, so I can already say that. So thank you very much.
Cheers, man. Well, thanks for that. We really appreciate that.
Yep. Have a good day.
You too.
Yeah, and I would chime in off of that I would highly recommend everybody listening to this space at least once a week jump into any of these Twitter spaces. This is where you're going to get the most bang for your buck on Twitter. This is by far the best thing that Twitter ever did, was these spaces.
Yeah, totally. For sure. Like, I just made a thread about this the other day, but crypto Twitter it's such a weird place, because you've got people shelling out dog and shit coins everywhere, but then you've got spaces like these where we're doing our best to bring actual information that's been uncovered by some of the largest organizations in the world to you guys, and show that it's like the shit they talk about the space on mainstream media isn't all of it. There's like, it's like an iceberg. 90% of it is underwater, and we're trying to show you guys everything that's going on underwater. But yeah, there's a couple more questions, so let's let Alex up now.
What's happening, Alex? Alex, you there?
I think he's trying to connect.
Yeah, I don't see his mute icon there, so. Okay, then maybe we should hop on to
Memora?
Yeah, sure. Alex, we'll get back to you when you load.
Memora, did you have a question?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey.
What's up?
How about you?
Welcome.
Viking, long time. I thought it was you, but I could be wrong. But anyways, I'm in Bermuda right now, trying to figure out this whole commercial network thing, and it's just kind of funny because now that I'm leaving here tomorrow, I'll be getting like, you guys just blasted me with information and standards that I could easily latch onto. But essentially, we're creating a commerce network, kind of think of like Craigslist, but with more wheels, and using this whole digitized documentation and whatnot to kind of latch onto. But it's kind of difficult in the States to do all of that just because of the regulatory lack of clarity. And that kind of like persists in many different jurisdictions. But my question to you guys is, how long do you think it will take, or rather, how is the momentum with the nations joining on to the MLETR standards, and how do you think that's going to expand over the next year, 3 years, and so on and so forth? Thank you.
No problem. So for example, MLETR, from my research, it started in 2017 from the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. And so it's been going on for, 5 years now. It's definitely, I would say, a 5-year thing with how slow governments and legislation is to get updated. So it is definitely a slow snail race. But it seems that the COVID pandemic has accelerated the need for digitalization. So it could be a year or two until we see more MLETR regions. But we just seen the United Kingdom, the UK, green light, and that is. So that's the status, but I don't work in trade finance, so I'm just going from what my research and everything that I've read. So it's a snail race.
Sounds good. No, thank you. I think that makes great sense with just the history of London being the Forex capital, and now Brexit and all that kind of stuff. It just seems like the stars are realigning for that to happen again. So that's really all I had, but thank you again, and I'm looking forward to more.
Awesome. Cheers.
Yeah.
Thanks for contributing and paying attention, and I hope some of that takes you down some good rabbit holes.
Thank you, friends. Aloha.
All right, should we get Gilbert up here? Gil?
Yeah, let's get Gil. What's up, Gil? I always see him in the spaces, so shout out to that guy. What's up?
Big supporter. He was here for our first space. I remember that.
Gil, you there?
Hey, what's
Hello?
up, guys? Just wanted to say,
What's happening?
you guys are awesome. I love this space. I learn so much every time I come in, and I just wanted to verify you are putting this on your YouTube, right, Citizen? Because I've watched a few on there. I assume that's what the recording's for, right?
Damn rights, man. We get it on our YouTube, and then also if you guys like Spotify, Token gets it on his Spotify, and we have it on both of our channels. So yeah, and I also put the threads that I post in here. I put it on there, so then if you send it to your families, well, tell them to research the threads too, so they can see the information and it's all there, and take them down some deep rabbit holes.
Exactly. I mean, sometimes the best news comes from not the people we trust, unfortunately. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird, but when you're talking to your family, sometimes it needs to be heard from others, unfortunately. So. But you guys do a really good job of explaining stuff on a technological level. So appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing.
Cheers, man. It's much appreciated.
Always later.
Yeah, just a reminder to everyone that every one of these spaces will be putting on both our Spotify's and YouTube's, just so that any points you guys thought were, I guess, kind of stood out here, you guys can kind of go back and revisit. But also just, if you guys ever have any questions and maybe you guys are living somewhere else in the world and the timelines don't quite line up right, just leave some questions down in our comments below, and we'll be sure to make some time to answer for those in next week's space.
I do have one question, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with respect to enforcement of these, let's say like Dubai trades with the UK, and how are they enforcing these, like, I mean, maybe the question is a weird one, but like my thought is that they are enforcing this trade the same way they would enforce previous trade, but it's just a lot more efficient. I guess like it's just a matter of time till it's a reality and creating a trade network. But like, has there been any like difficulties with enforcement so far that you guys are aware of?
I don't think so. How they're doing it is it's a standardization for digital documents. So the International Chamber of Commerce, if you guys look them up, and you see their reach and how big the ICC is, well, they're implementing that all the people that are connected to the ICC are going to meet that MLETR digital document standard. And that is how they're doing it, is by having these trade companies implement the digital document standard. So it's just basically we're seeing platforms, these trade finance platforms like XDC, Marco Polo, what else? Trade Trust, Trade Flow. What's another one? But they're just trade finance, and they meet that MLETR compliant digital document interoperability. So then any port, different places, they can just scan that QR code. They can move the files around digitally without having to deal with paper.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers.
But yeah, if anyone else has anything else to add, just come right up. We're just about reaching the end of the space, or this week's space. So yeah.
So I also just in the pinned tweets above there, so you guys can see. So there's one that's an R3 connection thread. So I don't know if people know what R3 is, but here, let me just give them what R3 is. Just give me a sec. I'm just pulling a document up. So this is how big R3 is. So R3 is an enterprise software firm that is pioneering digital industry transformation. Its proprietary platform, Corda, is digitalizing the processes and systems that firms rely on to connect and transact with each other, and has more than 350 institutions deploying and servicing and building on it. R3 has brought together over 140 regulators, central banks, commercial banks, exchanges, technology payments companies to focus on the technology, policy and impact of digital currencies issued by a central bank, so CBDCs. And they've also been included in Project UBIN, which is from the Singapore government, the MAS, and Project Jasper by the Bank of Canada. And so they're working on, and those projects I think were 2018, 2019, and now they're in like phase 5 of those projects. And it's just, so R3 is a huge innovative company. So I put in a thread there of, if you want to learn how XDC connects with R3. So XDC is used as a public to private bridge called the DASL bridge, Digital Asset Shared Ledger. And that bridge uses XDC to move from Corda's private platform. So Corda is a private consortium. So us in the public, we can't see what's going on behind the transaction layer, et cetera, et cetera. And well, what that does is the private layer uses XDC to go into a public blockchain, whether it's XDC or Ethereum or Bitcoin. It can move value between the Corda's private layer to their public layer, to public networks. And so that thread in there is just showing how the connections work. You can see all the information that back my theory and diagrams to explain how it works. There's also an XDC beginner guide in there. And then there's some MLETR information. The last one I shared is a big one that everyone should click and look at. And it's a G7 document, and it says Road to Reform for Electronic Transferable Records. And then I got ADGM, MLETR connections in there. You name it, it's in there. A lot of great information that I suggest everyone spends the hour, spend hours. Don't just spend 40 minutes looking into a network or into these ideas. Keep learning every day. Set time aside to keep building your knowledge, because there's so much information and there's not enough time. And if you say, you spend an hour and then you go invest in a cryptocurrency and you think it's going to take you to the moon. Well, that's not the way to do it, because you don't fully understand what you hold. If you don't fully understand what you hold, you're going to make a bad decision. You're going to sell too early. You're going to sell too late. So do a lot of research, try and understand. And that's why I share my research, is to try and inspire other people to directions where to look. It's not financial advice or anything, but just keep learning. That's all I can say is the best tip. Anyone else?
Keep learning, keep researching. There's so much to this space, and we're still so early. There's definitely a lot of information out there that neither Citizens or I have covered, not just in this space, but whatsoever. So keep digging, and I'm sure every one of you guys will find.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I worded that completely wrong.
No, well, like I find new things every day, man. Like I spend I quit watching TV, watching movies 2 years ago, and all I do on my spare time, other than work and family, is deep dive innovative technology to stay ahead of the curve. Because you know what, I find documents where I'm blown away. I'm like, how is this not in mainstream media right now to the masses? Like, why is this being covered up? There's so much stuff that just gets shoved under a rug. And like, I'm finding PDF files that, you know how they hide these documents? They have it on like the most weirdest spot on their site, or it's not even listed on their site, but it's like a PDF. The name of the PDF is literally a bunch of letters and numbers, like it's a goddamn DLT address. And it's like, oh, you sneaky buggers. Like, the most powerful pieces of information that I've found are from keyword searching Google, and just keep digging, keep learning. How does it work? You know, how does this put together? And you know what? I'll send the video there, but make sure all you guys are organized with your information. When you're researching, I created a video just to show some tips and tricks and like ways that I create my mind map. Is like, I literally, if I read an article that's like really awesome, I have a program that I take a screenshot and I drag and drop it wherever on this board. So it's literally a board of all news articles that I've seen in the last 3 years. I wish I only started a year ago. So there's 3 years of information that I could have had saved on a board. That's just like a digital memory that you can update every time you see something cool. So I wanted to throw that out there because I think it's a tip that everyone should hear to organize their stuff. And I'm going to share the video just so you guys can look at it and see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, like this space, like there's so much information here, and so much of it is hidden and stuff that a lot of times this does kind of seem like a full-time job where you're spending hours and hours just digging through regulated documents and stuff. So yeah, Citizens is going to share his video on how to best organize and kind of keep together all your connections and researches that you've done. And he's actually, like, personally speaking from experience, he's shown me a lot of very good websites and softwares to use to kind of just map out your connections and really visualize everything you're learning.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just shared it, guys, and then we'll get Alex up here because I see he's back. 1 sec, Alex, we're bringing you up. And Alex, mic is on you, friend.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I wanted to say thank you for sharing such great information. I think this is that you cannot find this anywhere else other than Twitter Spaces, like someone said here. It's very important that and very grateful for you guys to share your knowledge. I've been following this project since April 2020. It's been a long time already, and very exciting because this caught my attention about the global trade finance. It's been so slow, and especially now by knowing this fact that to trade paper is so costly and takes so much time to bring information aboard. And I think we're on good track on this project because it's just so disruptive to this industry. And I also wanted to ask a question about what is the XDC token native to? Is it native to the Cordite private network, or is just the native token for the blockchain itself to transfer?
So yeah, it's XDC has its own mainnet, so it's native to itself.
Okay.
And R3 has its own DLT, private DLT layer, and but they use XDC token for a bridge between the private Corda to the public networks, and that's through the DASL bridge, Lab 577. If you look that up in that thread there, you will understand that is a separate company. So R3 doesn't. So that's the funny thing about this is R3 years ago had the Zinfin partnership on their website, but they took that off.
Yes, I actually noticed that.
Yes. And so, why would they do that? And my theory is because they know how it operates in the back end. So why do they need to tell everyone in retail that they use XDC for that bridge from the private to the public? So what they did is they have it through a partnerships of partnerships. So R3 is partnered with Lab 577, which is a company, which is another corporation, and the Lab 577 is partnered with XDC network. So it's a partnership through partnerships, and it's all explained in those videos. You could probably spend 3 hours watching videos and then seeing how it interoperates.
Right. Oh, that's very interesting. Yes, because I knew that this has all to do with Corda R3 directly. But like you said, they have their partnerships and they don't have necessity because, I mean, I think I can say this. We're talking about the $80 trillion industry in the next 5 years or so. Is that correct? Does that sound correct?
They said for the trade finance industry, what they're trying to tokenize is around, I think, $19 trillion for trade finance. That's the amount of assets that they're trying to tokenize and bridge.
Okay.
It won't all be through XDC. It won't all be through XDC, not at all, no. Because there's multiple trade finance networks that are doing great things. So that's like CargoX. That's a trade finance tokenization network. What was the other one? There's a couple other ones. I talked about them earlier, but it's just not on the top of my head.
Yeah, but there's many other companies that are doing great work, like you said. And one more question is, how do you see XDC in terms of traffic solutions for cargo boats and stuff like that? You see XDC being able to interoperate that issue as well?
For what? It cut out there for a second.
Would you see XDC disrupting the cargo ship traffic and solution?
Yes, yes. So, for example, what I see is we got these digital document providers, these DLT networks that can attach a digital document to the DLT network. So, for example, that's a richer payment, a richer data fill. It's like the ISO 222 standard. Well, what that is, it's a messaging upgrade for the banks, because the current banking system, you can only attach like a fucking sentence. You can't attach an invoice. You can't attach any other information other than a couple words.
Communicate both ways at the same time.
Yeah, and there's no end-to-end tracking. So ISO 222 is a messaging standard upgrade. And so there's some of these DLTs. So for example, XDC, XRP, IOTA, Algorand are ISO 222 interoperable. So they can interoperate. So when that standard is used by banks around the world, those DLT tokens can have the processes behind it with the KYC, the AML, whatever other requirements to meet that ISO 222 standard. They can interoperate with traditional finance, and that includes attaching an invoice, attaching a PDF document, attaching whatever other file to that, and then that helps settle. So you now have rich document data attached to a payment that can settle within 2 seconds, have end-to-end tracking, et cetera, et cetera. But so, for example, what I was getting at is these trade finance platforms are going to reduce paper in the industry. So that's going to reduce shipment costs because it's going to take away all this manual labor for people having to deal with paper, whether it's verifying it, whether it's handing it over, whether it's losing it. And so that's how it's going to, and it's also, they're going to implement QR codes into the supply chain. So there's GS1. GS1 is the global language of business for, so like they're the ones that create all the QR codes. Well, they're creating QR codes for the supply chain industry that, you know, for now you can just scan at each point in the process of the shipment. It gets scanned and it's attached to the blockchain, blah, blah, blah. So it's removing all the paper, it's creating automation, and
this will probably also allow most of the companies that are trusted, let's say, to not have to be verified by the customs because they're already verified automatically onto the blockchain. So it's definitely going to be very disruptive.
Yes, and there's another initiative. It's called LEI, Legal Entity Identifier. It's being pushed now by the ICC, and what it is, it's like a 20-digit code that every corporation involved in trade finance, involved in shipping and receiving worldwide, will be given an LEI, Legal Identity Identifier. And so every invoice that company is sending, it's attached. So now you have all these invoices. So say you're JP Morgan and you have your legal entity identifier attached to all these shipments that are being shipped globally. Well, a customs agency will be able to pull up that legal entity identifier, see what shipments were attached to that company, and it's all digital now. Right, so that's what's being moved. Is everything's going to be digital. You're going to have companies that are given this identifier. That identifier is going to be attached to all their invoices, all their receipts. So now they have a living, breathing ledger of everything that they've been shipping, cost, blah blah blah, auditable, KYC, AML. Yeah,
it's a straightforward path. And I also have one more question. I just don't want to take too much time. I was been studying the XSwap protocol project. And I wanted to ask, what is it going to have a major role on this finance industry in terms of global trade? Because I believe that many companies are going to pay in different currencies and different methods. Right?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I haven't really dug too deep into the XSwap protocol. I'm not sure how that's going to play a role in traditional finance. One, the team isn't KYC'd. I don't think they're doxxed. That doesn't mean anything though, but I just don't know. I'm not too sure how they are going to play because like there's other institutional ways to move money between layers, between Fireblocks and like a couple of these other big exchanges for institutions. So I don't know how XSwap is going to be used in traditional finance.
We need to keep studying that one then and see what comes out.
Yeah, exactly, okay. Exactly.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Cheers.
Cheers, thank you.
Okay, well, I hope everyone's been getting some good information out of here. I hope you all enjoyed, and it's awesome to see this many people show up, get some information. Feel free to take a look at me and Tokenizers and Dagnum. He creates some really great content around DAG and other DLT networks. And feel free to give us a follow. If you like our information, leave some feedback, share, retweet, because, you know, the algorithm, it's crazy because like some of these articles that I've shared have some of the deepest information, and the algorithm just buries you. If you don't get that engagement where people are retweeting or commenting, the Twitter algorithm just buries it. It's just like, oh, okay, sweet. Like, so be sure to retweet if you got something good, leave feedback, and let us know how we can improve. And Token, if you want to say anything here, I think we should get ready to close it off, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. I'll just leave a couple final thoughts. So yeah, just what Citizen said, that again, this will be uploaded to both our YouTubes and Spotify's for anyone who wants to check this out again, just like all our other spaces, and to just really share and show some of your friends and family this stuff, because what we're covering is just we're kind of talking about the future digitalization of everything and how this world's globalized economy is going to move forward. And it's something that's really slept on, because I guess in a sense it's not really interesting relative to your average person's interests and hobbies, but it's a really big change that most of us aren't ready for, and even more of us have no clue what's going on at all. So just some final thoughts. Just keep in mind that we're all one space. This whole space is just one space. It doesn't matter what network you come from, what your favorite crypto asset is. We're all driving for one thing, and that's for the utility of all these networks to come to mass adoption and have this technology become adopted and utilized, and kind of just transfer us through this fourth industrial revolution.
Yeah, and it's and just to inspire people to stop thinking about these shit coins and getting rich overnight. Start learning about how the fourth industrial revolution is changing industries around the world, because it's happening. Mainstream media is ignoring it, and the only thing that I can say to wake you guys up is take a look at some of these threads and take a look at some of the information that literally backs some of the stuff that we've been talking about, to try and open your guys' eyes, because the mainstream media doesn't want people. They just want people to think Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and everything else is used for money laundering. There's no actual use case to blockchain and DLT. So just to let you guys know, there's a difference between cryptocurrencies and then blockchain and DLT. So blockchain and DLT, distributed ledger technology, is the institutional terms, the ones that will get you to the places of the regulated interoperability and stuff like that. If you just Google search crypto, what's the best cryptocurrencies, that's bringing you into the mainstream media hype cycle. But if you look at how distributed ledger technology is revolutionizing the industry using a different keyword search term, that will bring you down a different path. And so I'll leave you with that, guys. And thank you all for participating and being here today. And it's awesome to see so many great questions and participants.
Yeah, thanks for joining again, everyone. Hope everyone got something good out of it, whatever it may be. And we'll be right back here next week with a different topic, but same shit, more utility networks. So hopefully we'll see you guys there.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Well, everyone, I hope you have a wonderful day. Keep learning, keep living, enjoy that family time. Don't give up. If you're going through shit, fucking keep going, push harder, and stay motivated, and get out there and try and change the goddamn world. Alrighty, cheers, guys. Citizen of the future out.